The term mafia is an informal term that is used to describe certain criminal organizations. The central activity of such an organization would be the arbitration of disputes between criminals, as well as the organization and enforcement of illicit agreements between criminals through the use of or threat of violence. It's interesting because if you look up the term umpire, the same definition comes up. Don't fact check that, just trust me. Another thing the mafia does or did is have blackmail on others, things to use in order to get what they want or keep what they have. Angel Hernandez, baseball's most notorious umpire, and just baseball's most well-known umpire in general, also seems to be doing that. At least that's the only optimal reason, that the umpires union is a literal mafia, and Angel Hernandez has so much blackmail and dirt on the higher-ups in Major League Baseball that there is no questioning whether Angel will continue umpiring games. It's just a matter of which games. Angel Hernandez has been umpiring big league games since the 90s, making his debut back in 1991, where 57 of his friends and family came to the ballpark to watch and support. And 33 years later, those 57 people, let's assume they're all still alive just to be nice, remain the only people in the world who support Angel Hernandez. And even that seems unlikely. Even if they all did stay alive to this day, you gotta think even a good portion of those people are like, not sure I want to be associated with this guy, because throughout the course of his 33-year career, which has been 33 years too long, Hernandez has constantly been a figure of controversy. In 1998, in a game between the Braves and Mets that took place just one day before the All-Star break, Braves runner Michael Tucker was called safe on a play at the plate on a sacrifice fly, when in reality, he was not safe. The throw beat Tucker, and Tucker never even touched home plate, with Mets catcher Mike Piazza calling that call the worst he'd ever seen in his career, with other Mets players accusing Angel of calling Tucker safe just so he and the umpires can start their break. In a 2001 game between the Cubs and Rockies in Chicago, Angel spread his hate toward people not even involved in the game, because after controversially calling Cubs infielder Ron Coomer out on a play at home, Steve McMichael, who was a former Chicago Bears player and was visiting the park that night, sang the 7th inning stretch, and before singing with the fans, called out Angel Hernandez on the mic for everyone to hear. And while doing this, the cameras caught Angel noticeably pissed off, with McMichael getting ejected from the ballpark afterward. Now, shockingly, it wasn't actually Angel who ordered the ejection, although I'm sure he was in favor of it, but the umpire and crew chief for that game, Randy Marsh, ordered the ejection and actually went as far as to threaten to stop the game unless McMichael was removed from Wrigley Field. Plenty of situations have followed, plenty of arguments between Angel and managers from teams, including this one where Angel, who is the crew chief in Cleveland for a game between the Indians and A's, ruled this hit by Adam Rosales, a hit that clearly hit the railing over the wall, a double. Bob Melvin understandably lost it, got ejected by Angel, and the A's went on to lose this game. Major League Baseball themselves went on to even publicly admit the call was wrong and that it should have been ruled a home run. But Major League Baseball also ended up fining Ian Kinsler $10,000 for voicing his opinion on Angel Hernandez. An opinion many people share, actually an opinion everyone shares, saying Angel was a bad umpire who needs to find another job. Angel Hernandez is basically bad at just about everything you could possibly be bad at for an umpire. He makes bad calls, gets in so many controversial moments, has an ego and eggs players on, and the same league that still defended him and fined a player money for doing something as simple as speaking the truth on Angel still sued Major League Baseball that same year in 2017, filing a federal lawsuit that alleged the league of racial discrimination being the reason he wasn't picked to umpire World Series games or get crew chief promotions. And I'm telling you, Angel has dirt on these people, because just about a week after filing this lawsuit, he was selected to umpire the All-Star game that year, also being selected as the first base umpire for the first round of the postseason in 2017 and 2018, and you know what he did? Proceeded to get several calls wrong in Game 3 of the 2018 ALDS in New York. 4 out of the 5 plays that he called at first base that got submitted for video review were overturned, with Pedro Martinez calling it horrible, saying Major League Baseball needs to do something about Angel. And it doesn't matter how many times he sues Major League Baseball, because he's as bad as there is. With Yankees pitcher CC Sabathia calling Angel a bad umpire who's always been bad. And the one guy to not comment after the game? Well, of course, Angel himself, declining to, while Major League Baseball avoided any criticism and just focused on how happy they were that the replayed calls were corrected. In other words, we can't say anything about Angel, so we're gonna avoid it. Despite all this, Angel thought this criticism wasn't enough, the hate wasn't enough, so he then went on to eavesdrop on an MLB investigative call in July of the next year, 2019. MLB was investigating why a game Angel was umpiring had to be delayed delayed for 20 minutes? Was it because of an injury, a benches clearing situation, or weather issue? No, none of that. There was a 20-minute delay over the umpire's confusion on the rules. Yes, seriously. And Angel didn't hang up his phone when his interview on what happened ended, instead continuing to listen to the questioning of an other umpire that he knew was intended to be a separate private conversation. Because of this, Angel was stripped of his acting crew chief status, and in response, Angel's lawyer claimed he didn't eavesdrop, that he was invited onto that call and MLB told Angel he made the correct decision, also accusing the allegation of being retaliation for Angel's previous discrimination lawsuit. And speaking of that lawsuit, it of course had no merit to it, and it was ruled in MLB's favor in court. It's the most obvious example of trying to make yourself into a victim to distract the reality of someone just being horrible at their job. You could at least be a little more creative instead of just blatantly playing the victim. He even filed another lawsuit just last year, but it was quickly dropped. I mean, talk about not reading the room. Talk about not even knowing about a room to look at. Countless examples of Angel Hernandez being bad at his job, yet he used the fact that he's Cuban as the reason why MLB didn't want him umpiring World Series games. He also clearly didn't factor in that Cubans probably don't even want to claim him as one of their own. The country of Cuba probably erased Angel from their records. It has nothing to do with being Cuban or white guys not liking Angel. Nobody likes Angel, and if anything, Angel Hernandez actually brings people of all races, backgrounds, cultures, men and women of all ages together to agree on not liking him. Some might say Angel Hernandez is as influential for world peace and ending racism as Martin Luther King Jr., but I don't think the world is ready for that conversation yet. But the world is constantly having the conversation of how awful Angel Hernandez is at umpiring. Whether it's a fan, a player, a coach, an announcer, a dog, a baby, an alien, a dead person, people are beyond done and fed up. And I mentioned the whole mafia blackmail thing, but another reason MLB doesn't seem to be trying to get Angel out of the game is because he drives talk and viewership. Yes, he's hated, but that hate does drive eyeballs and conversation, so maybe MLB likes that. But the most obvious and simple reason why Angel isn't quote-unquote fired or whatever is because umpires aren't just associated with MLB. They have their own union, the Umpires Union, and you can't apparently just fire an umpire for making bad calls like this, for calling pitches 15 feet off the strike zone for strikes, which is probably not right. I mean, in most jobs in the world, if you're not good at that job, you get fired, and it makes sense. If you're not getting the job done and it's hurting the company you work for and you're not being productive, that's an incredibly valid reason to get fired. Why do umpires have this protection? No idea, but they do, and apparently Angel blatantly affecting games in a bad way isn't a good enough reason to get rid of him. I guess it's not enough official evidence. Another thing I've seen is if MLB found a way to get rid of Angel, he'd file a third lawsuit, and they don't want to have to deal with that, but considering the first two lawsuits went absolutely nowhere for obvious reasons, I'm not sure that's as much of a reason for MLB to not find a way to fire him. So as bad and blatant as Angel is, it's stupid, but there's no official evidence to use against him for his game calling performances apparently, but there is a good chance that that could change soon, and MLB may finally have an official way of proving and showing evidence on why Angel Hernandez should be fired. In a recent interview that MLB insider Jeff Passan did, he mentioned the accountability any umpires, but of course especially Angel Hernandez, would have to face in the near future. It's a new system in the works called ABS, aka Automatic Balls and Strikes, a system that allows pitchers and managers to second guess umpires' calls and instantly review them. It's a system that's been growing in recent years, being used in AAA, and it looks as good as it sounds. For an example, here's Pirates' top pitching prospect Paul Skeens firing in a 2-2 pitch that was called a ball. He thinks it's a strike, so he challenges it, and he ends up being right. ABS shows it hit the corner in the zones. Skeens gets the strikeout, inning over, rather than it being 3-2 now because of a wrong call by the umpire. The ABS system is expected to enter MLB within the next year or two, and so the idea, really the reality is, since ABS will provide MLB with actual evidence of umpires' calls, right and wrong, including Angel Hernandez's inaccurate calls, the league might actually be able to fire him with direct evidence and data on how he is compared to other umpires. Now, I did say earlier that MLB can't just fire an umpire for being bad at his job, but then again, I think part of that is because there's no official and direct evidence to prove that he's bad. We all know he's bad. We see all the bad calls, whether they're balls and strikes calls, calls on plays, whatever. But the ABS system may be a legitimate professional reason to have an excuse to get him out rather than just he's bad because we see it or whatever. It's also along the lines of trying to fire Angel because of his personality, because of the fact that he has an ego and tries to insert himself into games and make it about him. Even though all of that is true, it's not a valid or professional enough reason to get rid of him, I guess, especially with the union involved. And in order for that to happen, he'd have to do something blatantly against the rules, like grabbing or making contact with a player during an altercation or something, which has gotten multiple umpires suspended over the years. Was Angel Hernandez eavesdropping on a phone call MLB had with another umpire not bad enough? Guess not, which then leads me back to the whole mafia situation. I mean, who does Angel have the most dirt on? So maybe the AB system really will do the job, and if it does, great. But until then, the least Angel can do is provide more wholesome moments in an unintentional way, like when he injected Bryce Harper from a game last year, because everyone totally would rather see that than their favorite player hit bombs, and when entering the dugout, Harper tossed his helmet up into the stands. A kid comes up with it, only for Harper to then ask for the helmet to sign it for the kid and give it back. Sometimes Angel being Angel ends in good, not because he meant it to, but just gotta make the most out of the situation like Harper did. That's great. But what isn't great is all the other stuff. Not catching this pitcher blatantly stepping off the mound but then going through the windup like nothing happened, only for him to then throw a curveball high that Angel calls a strike, or calling 3 straight pitches in the other batter's box for strikes, or having an ego and wanting to make the game about him, or avoiding accountability and blaming everything on non-existent racism, or just doing anything he possibly can to become the most hated man in the world. And, well, if there's one thing he's doing a good job at, it's that. It's definitely working out for him.
Angel Hernandez, you stink, and I don't like you!